Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm very excited about today's presentation. My name is Dr. Terry Winfrey, and I am the president of the Chicago Southland Chamber of Commerce. And we have an exciting presentation. Many of you are not new to these different webinars that we have. This is part of our legislative series. And we always bring in either some of our local mayors or some state officials or some United States officials. And today we're right here in our own neighborhood with our partners, people that we work with on a regular basis. And I'm very excited to hear a little bit more about the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association and all the great things they have going on. And if you're not new to us, you know that in this series that we have, our Mayor Ron Gardner from the village of Glenwood is our facilitator. He's also involved with our Government Affairs Committee that helps to plan these events. So with that said, I'm going to let Mayor Gardner take over. In the meantime, please be sure to put any questions you have in the Q&A box, and we will address those at the end. And we have a jam-packed session, so make sure you put your questions in and we'll get to them soon. Mayor Gardner, please take over.
I just hope everybody knows in the webinar here how important the South Suburban Mayors and Managers are to the Southland. Their director, Christy, the executive director, Christy De Laurentiis, does a fantastic job, and the influence that the South Suburban Mayors and Manager has over the legislature is amazing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christy, and she can introduce her team for the presentation. Christy, you're muted.
Thank you. And thanks, Mayor Gardner. And thank you to the Southland Chamber for inviting us to be part of this series today. I'm joined by colleagues, and I'll let them very briefly introduce themselves in a minute. But I wanted just to share a broad, high-level perspective on who the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association is for those that aren't as familiar with our association as our mayors and other partners are. We're an intergovernmental agency representing 45 municipalities in the South Suburbs, which is essentially South Cook County and Northern Will County. We represent nearly 750,000 residents, so it's a very large geography. But that region that we represent has struggled for inclusive growth over decades, and the pandemic has exacerbated the challenges that we have. And so South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association and my team essentially wanted to make sure that we were meeting the needs of our communities and the communities as a whole. That's residents, businesses, and the municipal governments themselves. So we wanted to help focus and support rebuilding of a more stable, prosperous, resilient region. And we focused on creating tools that could accelerate change and strengthen our region and really spur economic development and investment in the South Suburban region. So we sort of tried to translate that overused phrase, which is build back better, and really put that into practice here in the South Suburbs. So today we're going to showcase how SSMMA helped to expand our economic development tools in the Southland. We've also focused on stabilizing and reinvesting in local communities, and we'll talk about that, and then rebuilding our critical infrastructure, which we know is so important. So I'm going to start by introducing Sarah Kabitas, who is our planning director and technical assistance director, who has really taken and led the charge on these initiatives that we've introduced during the pandemic. So while we were really kind of hunkered down addressing COVID and the impacts on our South Suburban residents, we also really focused on these tools and developing strategies that help us move forward post-pandemic. So Sarah, I will invite you to start, and the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Christy. As Christy said, my name is Sarah Kabitas. I'm the Planning and Technical Assistance Director for South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association. And so I do all sorts of things: planning, economic development, I also manage our GIS team, and another thing that I've done a lot with over the past few years is update the website and our online communications. So during the pandemic, the way that we worked changed. And instead of waiting for things to go back to normal, SSMMA decided to see the shift as an opportunity to improve our online communications and branding and start focusing more on developing and promoting online tools. So the first big change that we made was to our website. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. There we go. So the first big change we made was to our website, which, kind of started it all, which you can see here. So we redesigned the website to highlight our most important programs and to just be more user-friendly and intuitive, because in the past, we still had a ton of useful information. We still had amazing tools and programs, but they were really difficult to find and navigate. They were very difficult for people to access just because our website was not super intuitive. So most recently, our improved online presence has been vital to the success of the Southland Reactivation Act, or Public Act 102-1010. So the Southland Reactivation Act is model legislation that lowers tax rates, has the potential to positively impact the South Suburbs in an immediate way by spurring revitalization of blighted or underperforming commercial and industrial properties. So on our website, you can get to the Southland Reactivation Act by clicking from program areas, or you can scroll down to the center here and click this. So this takes you to the Southland Reactivation Act webpage, landing page. And so as you can see, this landing page walks the user through the basics of the incentive. So we have here, the Southland Reactivation Act is a tax abatement incentive to property developers who purchase tax-exempt commercial and industrial property within Bloom, Bremen, Calumet, Rich, Thornton, or Worth Townships in Cook County. Up top, we've got quick links. These are everything that you need to know, very easy to find. You have your incentive calculator. You can search eligible sites, download what you need to submit to the county. You can review the text of the bill. This is very important. That links you to the bill itself. We have frequently asked questions. And as I said, this website just kind of walks you through, tells you everything that you need to know. First of all, most importantly, it tells you that the Southland Reactivation Act is for non-tax generating commercial and industrial parcels, bringing them back to productive use. So these are parcels that are currently owned by the municipality or either of our land bank partners, and that would be the Cook County Land Bank or the South Suburban Land Bank. So this is not an incentive for parcels that are currently owned by private developers. This is for bringing those currently tax exempt parcels back onto the tax rolls. Also, those parcels have to be located in Bloom, Bremen, Calumet, Rich, Thornton, or Worth Townships. They need to be tax exempt, as we've said, and they need to be zoned commercial or industrial. So the incentive can be applied to properties that meet these qualifying criteria. And once the incentive is applied, the parcel is then assessed at 50% of the last known equalized assessed value. So for the first year a property is certified as a Southland reactivation property, the aggregate tax bill liability for the property cannot exceed $100,000. There's a ceiling. The tax bill for the first year will never be above $100,000. Once you have that base year of $100,000, there's the discount on the liability would decrease gradually, but continue over the course of 12 years. So you start with a tax bill of $100,000 or less. And every year that tax bill increases until you're at kind of a standard tax rate after the end of 12 years. So if you're interested in taking advantage of this incentive, I mean, I think that that is probably the thing that's going to come to mind first is, okay, so this is a discount over 12 years. What is that tax bill going to look like? And luckily, we have an online calculator. So you can use this online calculator to calculate your tax bill. Now, in order to use the calculator, you do have to have some basic information about the parcel. And all of that information is in here. All of the instructions on how to use it are in here. But for the ease of the example, we'll just kind of type in some numbers and we'll make some things up. We'll make some assumptions. But what it requires that you do is have a specific parcel in mind. And then after you have the specific parcel, use some of the other tools that we have online to find out the last known EAV prior to exemption. What that means is that's the last time that the parcel was actively on the tax roll, the last tax that they paid before it was taken over by the city or taken over by the land bank and became tax exempt. So let's say you've looked up your parcel. We have a spreadsheet where you can do that. You've looked up your parcel and you found out that the last known EAV, the last tax bill before this became tax exempt, was $2 million. Type that in there. And then you used our search tool to find out the last known tax rate. Right now, the last known tax rate is going to be from 2020. So let's say you searched, you found the last known tax rate for this parcel was 6.789. Great. Scroll down. Your last known EAV prior to exemption is $2 million. The incentive reduces that EAV by 50%. That's $1 million. Multiply that by your tax rate and your estimated tax bill is $67,890. That's for the first year. And then you can see down here in the calculator portion, you can see that the tax bill increases by 10% each year until ultimately at the end of 12 years, you're kind of back to a standard tax rate. You've ultimately paid $1,451,779. So as we mentioned, this tax rate is capped at $100,000. So let's say, for example, this was a $5 million tax bill. Oops, sorry about that. My calculator's too secure.
You have to go up to the, this is the one that you built. You have to go up on the top.
Sorry about that. You can only edit the cells you're supposed to edit. That's a good example of how it works. Okay, so if you have the last known EAV prior to exemption, that's $5 million, you can see that's going to make, when you do the 50% EAV, that's going to make your estimated tax bill technically going off that 50% over $100,000. But as you can see in this calculator, it drops it down automatically to $100,000. It's never going to exceed that amount. So when municipalities are ready to kind of start this process, when they're ready to designate a parcel as a Southland reactivation parcel, all they have to do is click the link that says Toolkit and Submission Roadmap, and it drops you down here to everything that you need to know. So all of these documents that are linked here are templates for the different kind of letters and notifications that need to be sent to taxing bodies, the Cook County assessor, the Cook County clerk, et cetera. So it's just a step-by-step roadmap for submission. Since the Southland reactivation designation process is municipally led, most of these tools that we have online are geared towards municipalities. For example, this roadmap is a submission roadmap for municipalities because they're the ones who are going to be submitting the information. However, the first two steps on this roadmap, the visit the online map to explore eligible sites and the use the online calculator, these are definitely also useful for developers who are looking to locate in the South Suburbs and take advantage of this incentive. So we've already looked at the calculator, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it now to our senior GIS analyst, Kai Funahashi, to walk us through how to locate an eligible site on our incentive mapping tool.
All right, thank you, Sarah. I'm going to start a screen share. And I'm gonna start right where Sarah left off, which is right at that landing page where we introduced the links to all of the resources that you could use. I'm gonna start from here. And the link that you'll see here, one of them says search eligible sites. And here, this link allows you to go to the map that will show you where all the eligible sites are. First, it'll open up with a disclaimer. All it says is that we've gathered this information from a number of different sources. And so if you notice something, if you have any updates to data, if you have your own data set that you think is a better data set that we could use, or if you notice any errors or anything like that, or if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact us through this online request form. And it'll give you a place where you can share your comments. Once you click OK on that, it'll take you to the map itself. What you're going to see very first is you're going to see all of the eligible sites. So in here, in the dark bluish green colors are all of the eligible sites based on the three main criteria that we've discussed. Is it in the right township? Does it have the correct zoning? And is it municipally owned or land bank owned? So once we determined that it is eligible through these three criteria, then only those will show up. If you want to see kind of the more general context of it, you can go ahead and turn off this filter in the upper right hand corner, and you'll be able to see all of it and see the different types of categories that we have. There's a button that'll take you to the legends up on the upper right hand corner, and that'll give you some more details on what some of the colors are, what do they mean. You can also, let's say you have a, let's say you're working in a municipality and you're thinking, okay, I want to have a, I want to work with a property in so-and-so city. What are my options? So what you can do is in this filter, you can click around and find the city that you're going to be interested in. Let's say you're interested in a property in Chicago Heights. You can click on Chicago Heights, hit apply, and then it will filter to just the, there we go, just the properties that are in Chicago Heights. So we can travel down to Chicago Heights and you'll see just those properties. You can download this list of properties by going to the table down below. There's a little tab that you can click to open up the tab, the table, and close it and all that. So you can open up the table, and in options, there is an option to export all to CSV. That'll give you a table of all your available potentially eligible properties in Chicago Heights. And it'll give you information such as the PIN number and all that, and you can use that to look up more details that you need in order to fill in and get the exact estimated values of your property. Another thing that you can do is, let's say, I'm going to turn off and reset the filters, so we're back to the start. Let's say you're interested in like a particular property, and you're thinking, okay, I want to look for this particular property and I want to see if it is eligible. So what you can do is there's three different ways to do it. You can click through the map, zoom in, find the property that you're interested in, and then click on it, and it'll give you the information. You can also look for it by searching the address in here. So let's say I want to look for this property and I have the address for it, but I wasn't really sure where it is. You can just type in the address and it'll take you there. If you click on that parcel, it'll give you what you need. You can also look it up by the PIN. Let's say you have a little document on your desk and it gives you the PIN number, but you're not sure where that PIN is located, but you're interested in that property. You can look up that PIN as well. You type it in there, leave out the hyphens, but as long as you type it in there, it'll give you the result you need. So it's 3 different ways you can search up the property. If you want to see a little bit more details of it, you can also go in here. There's a link that'll take you to the assessor's office itself, where you can take a look at some of the more detailed information if you are so inclined to do so. So that is kind of the general idea of the interactive web map. It's designed so that if you have any questions of, okay, where do I want to look? Or I have this property, is it editable? Then this map really helps you out in figuring out some of those very basic questions of where you want to locate.
Great. Thank you, Kai. So that's the interactive web map that goes along with the Southland Reactivation Act incentive. You can use that to pull information that you'll need to fill out the calculator and to move forward with the incentive. Kai, did you have anything else to add before we move on from this map?
I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So the Southland Reactivation Act map is our newest online tool, but I think, as we all know, the struggle our municipalities face in the South Suburbs dealing with abandonment and blight is not a new issue. So in preparation for the Southland Reactivation Act to be passed and to prepare for other potential incentives and programs that may come up for managing blight, a number of our municipalities have turned to SSMMA to help them track abandonment and blight in an easy-to-use online portal. So we've done this for a couple of our towns, but no other municipality has really taken this task as seriously as the city of Harvey, who commissioned SSMMA to create a custom tool, not only to locate, but also to evaluate every blighted property in the city of Harvey. So Kai's going to show you now the Harvey Vacant Properties tool, and he'll kind of walk you through the process.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. So I want to briefly mention this abandonment map that we developed for the city of Harvey over the past year or so. It's kind of a long project that we had that the city of Harvey was eager to take on. But the end product is kind of a simple web map that you can search properties for vacant or abandoned status. We built this from scratch. We literally had no data on it, which was part of the reason that Harvey really wanted to get this started. One of the key highlights of this map is the fact that it includes photographs of abandoned property. And how it was developed was we literally had people go from one address to the next for the entire city just to check on how the buildings look. And if they are abandoned, we have photos of what that looks like. What's great about this data set is we can use this in conjunction with, for example, land bank property data sets or city-owned property data sets. And that'll help us determine, okay, this is land that has potential, and there's opportunity for us to reutilize this land. There's other functions that the city of Harvey is using this data set for example, prioritizing demolition fundings by location. They've had some arson incidents related with abandoned properties, so they're trying to use this as a tool to try to figure out and mitigate the damage from that. So I'll show you what that looks like. And this is what it looks like here. There's different colors that denote if it's occupied, partially vacant, if it's an unknown status, if we couldn't really figure out just by looking, vacant, vacant lot, or if it's just, if it's kind of normal. So an example is if we go down to like a vacant lot. There's a picture here, but it'll also, there's a picture that the city also took, and you can see that. Another example could be like if you have a abandoned property here, and somebody took a picture of it, and you can sort of see the telltale signs of the abandonment that is taking place. So what's great about this map, from the standpoint of gathering data, creating a map for our users to build, is that one, we had nothing, and we built this from scratch, which is something that isn't impossible to do. A lot of our municipalities, sometimes they get a little hesitant on trying to get GIS projects started just because they think, oh, we don't have anything to work off of. But it's okay. There's always a way. The other part is there's all sorts of different options of doing this. Harvey isn't the only city that is working on this project. We have a couple of other municipalities. For example, Calumet City is working on it. Hazel Crest is trying to get started on it. Stager is, I think, interested in trying to get a project started. And it doesn't have to be the same way of building this map. You can build it in all sorts of different ways. You can gather data from all sorts of different methods. We encourage all of our municipalities, if they are interested in gathering this data and putting together a data set, that there is a way, and we will help you find a way, no matter how difficult it may seem. That's the general idea of this vacant properties data set.
I think so. If just pardon me for jumping in here, but again, one of the things that I wanted to stress that is important to remember when we're looking at this abandonment app is it's really it's a tool that was created to support the municipality as they were making difficult decisions with limited resources. So they were able to prioritize areas in their community and really see where they had the greatest potential, in their downtown area, near the transit station, et cetera, and where they also had, safety concerns and knew that they needed to dedicate public resources. So it allowed them to be effective when they're applying for grants to the state and federal agencies and secure funding in areas of need. So this is one that I would just recommend to our municipal partners to think about, because it allows them to accelerate and potentially accelerate investment in their enterprise zones, their opportunity zones, and really know where they should focus their efforts. Thanks, Kai. I just wanted to kind of jump in before you closed out this slide.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Christy.
Great. So as you've seen, creating tools for municipalities helps them to run more efficiently and to do better business with developers and investors. But, we primarily work for municipalities, our members are municipalities, but sometimes ideas for tools come up that are more investor focused from the start and not necessarily targeted at municipal users. So one example that we have of that is what we call our regional cannabis viewer. So the genesis of this tool was the Illinois Adult Use Cannabis Social Equity Program, and the fact that much of the South Suburbs have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs, and therefore are now eligible for social equity-based cannabis licenses, loans, and technical assistance. So because each municipality in the South Suburbs has its own laws and ordinances relating to cannabis businesses, we wanted to make a one-stop shop online for potential cannabis entrepreneurs who were interested in locating their business in the South Suburbs, but kind of helping them cut through a lot of that, confusion of, oh, well, is this in, this municipality or this municipality? What are the zoning requirements for this one versus this one? This way, everything is all online, and it's very easy for a potential investor to come in and see exactly where they can locate and what the rules are around their business. It also helps municipalities because it lets them show the effects of the ordinances that they pass, and it lets them show kind of the real life implications of, buffer zones and things like that as they relate to cannabis. So Kai is gonna show you one last map, which is our cannabis cannabis map. Go ahead, Kai.
All right, thank you, Sarah. I'm gonna start by going back to our homepage. And you can access this map through our GIS page, which you can find under program areas. And it'll open a different landing page that's centered towards our GIS department and our GIS consortium members. But one of our regional, this cannabis sphere is one of our regional projects. And we have some regional projects where we develop data sets and put together maps for our entire region. And the cannabis sphere is one of our examples. So in here, you can open up the cannabis sphere. And it's going to open up a map with a couple of different things that you can look at. It's going to focus on each individual municipality. And so you can click through the filters in the left-hand column to view the city or village that you're interested in. Now, not all of the municipalities are going to have information as of now, just because some of our municipalities are still figuring out what exactly their ordinance is going to be and how exactly they're going to regulate cannabis business and manufacturing establishments within their municipality. But you can click in here and find examples. For example, we can go to like Village Matteson. And then the map will take you to the Village of Matteson and then show you the big picture. So in really simple terms, green is eligible, red is ineligible. And you can search by the different types of cannabis establishment because different types have slightly different regulations. You want to be, X number of feet away from this zoning. That number might change depending on the type. So you can kind of click around and choose different sorts of establishment types, and the colors will change. And that'll help you get an idea of, okay, I want to locate a business establishment in this village. What are my options? And then you can go in and click on any particular parcel, and it'll give you examples of how they might be eligible. You're eligible to develop a dispensary here, but you're ineligible to develop a cultivation center here, for example. And then there's a little bit more details that you can go. You can click on the county assessor website link here, and it'll take you to the county assessor website. It'll give you the address. It'll give you some information on the area of that particular parcel. There's also some information about what exactly it says in the ordinance about any of the buffers. It cannot be X number of feet away from this type of property, that type of property. We have all of that information that'll show up in this column. We also have, just as reference, the definition as defined by the act that legalizes the establishment of cannabis properties within the state of Illinois. So that's the general idea of this map. You can also open up options for layers here and see, for example, if there are options of establishing a cannabis site within TIF districts or within opportunity zones, etc. You can also view what exactly the buffers are. So these pink areas are exactly the areas where by definition, you're not going to be able to establish any cannabis sites. And then there's also a couple of links on the bottom here. One is a very similar link to what I mentioned earlier about if you have any questions, if you have any updates, if you notice any errors, you can submit those comments through this form that you can go to from this link in the bottom left-hand corner. There's also a link here. I'll show you the one at the very bottom first. This one takes you to a list of our member municipalities and their status of their cannabis ordinance. So not all of our members have the cannabis ordinance put together. You can see the ones in the orange are the ones where we don't have enough information to map. Whereas the blue ones, we've put together all the data. We have all the ordinances that you can refer to, and we were able to put together a map. The dark gray areas indicate where the village or the city themselves have already said no to business establishments. And you can view a detailed list here and go to links of where we've put links to the municipal code where it mentions cannabis ordinance and regulations. So that's the general idea. There is another web app in here that's very similar to this, but has some additional features that you can click around and play around with. But that's the general idea of this regional cannabis viewer.
Okay, so that's it for our online tools. And next we have our transportation planner, Leslie Ronner, who's going to talk a little bit about SSMMA's transportation program.
Hi, I'm Leslie Rower. I did get married recently, so that's understandable for Sarah. But I am our transportation planner. Whoops, sorry. There we go. And for SSMMA, and I wanted to talk to you today about our SSMMA transportation, communities. So we have 35 transportation communities, unlike the 45 communities for all of the other pieces for us, excuse me. And our transportation communities are selected because, they are a part of it because that is who gets the surface transportation funding money from the feds. So surface transportation program funding comes from the federal government and then goes to IDOT and then goes to CMAP, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. And then from there, CMAP distributes that to all of the COGs, the Council of Governments throughout the region. So not confusing at all, I know. But all of that money that does come here is just for these 35 communities in SSMMA. So we give assistance to our communities in a wide variety of ways. If there is a roadway that's being redone by IDOT or a county or a township that goes through their community, we assist them in helping them decide what kind of additional facilities or what they would like the roadway to look like in their community. So, IDOT tends to get the say because it's their road and their funding, but we can say, this community would like to see lighting or sidewalks or bike lanes or whatever the case may be. And so we assist them in being able to do that. We also assist with a wide variety of planning. So we do trail planning and area planning, and obviously roadway planning, but then we're assisting with ADA transition plans and deciding on what type of facilities go on the roadway and making sure that when we do planning for our communities and assist them in this way, we get this plan done when we know the roadway is about to come up to get done so that we can get it backed by the community and backed by community support. So that way, when the roadway does come through, it's a very easy process to get those facilities that they'd like to see. And also trail planning, we have a wide variety of trails. There's a wide variety of ways that things can go different ways with trail planning, but we just want to make sure that communities are being able to get all of these pieces that they need in their roadways. We also, when the capital bills were coming to the General Assembly, we met with each community individually and had them decide what or prioritize what projects they would like to see in their community to go on that wish list to the General Assembly. And many of those projects were funded because of that. Oops. So as part of our STP funding, the Surface Transportation Program funding that comes from the feds to us for our local projects, we have, our GIS team created this amazing tool to be able to access a wide variety of information. So we recently updated our methodology to be able for each project, for each call for projects, to have communities complete and rank how their streets can be funded. So on our last call for projects, which was January 2022, Glenwood applied for a Holbrook Road project. And our GIS team created this tool where they can go and click on the roadway and you can see who owns the roadway, how many crashes have occurred and what type they are, what the average daily traffic is. And then all of this information is also open to the public, and we put all of this into items and rank these projects. And so this last call for project, Holbrook Road, was selected to be able to get funding for all of the phases of construction. And as much as that is a wonderful thing, things do take time, and you aren't always able to just go out and start construction tomorrow as much as we want to. So we do have to strategically place our projects throughout the next 5 years in these funding cycles. So Holbrook Road, get ready, it's going to get done. We also assist our communities in doing different policies. And one of those policies that we try to really work on is complete streets. And so I wanted to give some examples of some things that are going to be happening and some things that have already happened. So you can see on the left there, the PACE bus that has pulled up to the bus stop, and it's a little bit difficult for people in a wheelchair to be able to access this stop or be able to access the stores that are behind it. So we work with communities to make sure that there are sidewalks and that there is pedestrian grade lighting so that not only they can get to the store or the doctor's office, but they can also be able to cross the street to get to the bus stop on the other side to get back home. We also assist communities, as you can see, these two pictures on the right are before and after of a roadway that they did. And it obviously was in need of resurfacing. And when they did it, there was some speeding on the street. So they created a way to make the lanes narrower and allow for cars to drive slower in this area. So as part of our technical assistance, it's not only complete streets, but we also do green infrastructure. So assisting communities in dealing with some of their stormwater management, and not only doing the infrastructure pieces, but developing those policies for them as well. One last piece that we also do is around our land use. And we tell our communities that, you know, you get to decide what you want your community to look like. So it's not only when IDOT or a township comes through to do a roadway, but it's also when businesses come in. So this is one of my favorite examples of Buffalo Wild Wings, and there are two different ones. The one on the left, you can see it's a little bit difficult to get there from the sidewalk. You might have to cross some grass and go through the parking lot and interact with vehicles. But Buffalo Wild Wings has certain things that are mandatory for them, like that black and white pole that's sticking down the corner of the building. So the one on the right was built in a different way. And this is what the community insisted upon, was they wanted it to be able to have people walk up to the front door. All of the parking's in the back. They still have the parking. They still have their poles. They still have their awnings. but you can see that communities get to decide how they want it. And so that's part of what we do at SSMMA, is empowering communities to be able to have the knowledge to say, this is what I want to see in my community, and giving them the tools to make it happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. And thank you to Kai and Sarah for leading us through that. Ron, at this time, maybe I could just offer a couple of comments, and then we could open up for questions for as long as you'll allow us, and participants have questions. What I wanted to say is that on our Southland Reactivation Act, we understood, and we've heard from businesses and participated with the Chamber of Commerce for many years, understanding the tax pressures and the challenges that businesses have in the South Suburbs. Businesses and residents, as residents of the South Suburbs, we understand that it's been a challenge to be competitive with Northwest Indiana and even parts of Will County. And one of the things that we wanted to do was look for a unique solution. And we approached our legislators, our Southland delegation, and asked for support for what is now known as the Southland Reactivation Act. So that didn't happen overnight. That was a lot of policy and internal discussions with municipalities and other external partners. But ultimately, we were successful passing it this year. And so, it's in our own best interest to really make sure that we've got a very efficient tool that can work for tax exempt parcels that are owned by local governments now or our partnering land banks. So just wanted to say that. And then also some of the other strategic initiatives that we've been tackling is really to try to change the trajectory of the South Suburbs, really to try to improve our economic conditions and potential, and move the region forward. So I just wanted to sort of drive that home in terms of how we've shifted to create these tools during the pandemic, and we'll continue to do that because we think that having these in place allow us all to move forward with deliberation. So just happy to answer any questions that you may have. I know there were a couple in the Q&A, but I'll follow your lead, Moderator Gardner. Thank you.
That's good. Kai, we have a question. Can you show us they would like to see an example. This is from Samuel Boynes. Can you show an example of a land or parcel that have potential for industrial or commercial development?
So while Kai's pulling that up, I just want to explain that if you go to the Southland Reactivation Act website, I assume we're talking about Southland Reactivation Act, in which case, if you go to the website and click search eligible sites to pull up the map that Kai's going to show you, the only sites that's going to highlight are sites that are eligible through zoning, which are commercial and industrial. So if it pops up on that eligible sites map as an eligible site, it automatically means it's zoned commercial or industrial.
Thanks, Sarah. I'll add a couple more things to that. So there's a couple of different ways where that you can confirm the zoning of your property that you're interested in. If I may share my screen real quick, I'll do that real quick. Go back to that property that I gave an example of, which is located in Richmond Park. One way you could look at it is through, when you open up the information box, it'll tell you what exactly the zoning is. So for example, this property that you're interested in is zoned as town center secondary commercial. The other way that you can look at it is if you open up the options to show other types of data, then you can, instead of looking at it through the ownership type, you can look at it through zoning. And if you go back to the legend, it'll tell you whether it's commercial, industrial, mixed use, what have you. Because in here it does say / mixed use, it is labeled as a mixed use and are very general categorizations. But that is the other way that you can look up the zoning of the property that you're interested in. Again, as I mentioned a couple times, if you see an error, if you're like, wait a minute, that's not the right zoning, let us know and we can fix that right away too.
Great. Thanks, Kai. Christy, I think it's fantastic that the Southland Reactivation Act was passed. How does that help business and residential properties, that the owners that are already here? You're on mute, Christy.
Thank you. This new economic development tool was designed to bring blighted, languishing properties back onto the tax rolls. So having tax exempt parcels contributing to the base, then the idea is that everyone's tax bill drops. So we see this both as an economic development tool in the toolkit of the South Suburbs, but also as a near-term property tax solution. So while while we all are suffering, we see that the more properties that are coming in, put into productive use, the more are contributing to support our schools and local governments and everything, and ultimately reduce the tax pressures on existing businesses. So we see that having this new increment coming in will start to reduce the actual tax bills on residential and business property owners.
So you said that this is a pilot program. What happens with the incentives at the end of the pilot period?
So the 5-year pilot, the legislation was passed as a pilot in Springfield because this was completely unique. And I will say during testimony, and I know you were in Springfield many times talking to legislators, folks across the state were saying, why don't we have this? Why aren't we doing this? And we said to everyone, let us prove how this works and tell the story, and then you can define how it works in your own community. But currently any site that is supported by a municipality and designated as a Southland reactivation site will have that 12-year incentive extending beyond the 5-year period. So up until the 5-year period is to get the sites enrolled, and then they will have this incentive for 12 years. That said, we do believe that with the level of interest and having properties coming online, we'll be able to tell the story about how these are putting non-productive parcels back into productive use. And we can tell the story to the General Assembly. We think ultimately, by the time we're in year 4, we'll be back saying, you need to lift the pilot status and extend this because this is working. And so we're very optimistic about that.
So I know that the Class 8 was designated because we're losing businesses to here in Cook County to Indiana and Will County. How does the Class 8 and the Reactivation Act, how does that balance out between the two? What's the differences?
So really for the investors and the municipalities that are considering development agreements with developers, there should be an analysis of what's the better property tax incentive. The Reactivation Act was created, its genesis was really to have a super incentive. It establishes a very low tax bill and takes the process out of the reassessment process, the 3-year cycle that all properties face as part of the Cook County reassessment process. So we see that taking it back to the base year equalized assessed valuation, as Sarah described, that was when the last time property taxes were paid for a property, which could be 10 or 15 years ago, could be 2 years ago. It's really hard to know for each individual sites, but many of the sites that are now enrolled have have sat dormant for a long time. So taking it back to that base year EAV and then halving that value really gets the tax bill down extraordinarily low. And we think that this will be a unique tool that basically attracts investors to our area. And if as it stands right now, this Reactivation Act is not renewable. And so some developers or municipalities may want to consider a Class 8. Again, Class 8 has that volatility with reassessment. And so it's less predictable, but they're both, viable tools for the South Suburbs.
We have a question from Pat Thies. United Way is investing in the South Suburbs through the neighborhood networks. Currently, the Blue Island Robbins Neighborhood Network had a feasibility study done regarding bringing a grocery store to the area. The Reactivation Act could help with this. Who would we talk to from your organization to get this feasibility study out there? I am part of the Blue Island Robbins Neighborhood Network and interested in working to get this done.
So what I would suggest is potentially sending maybe Sarah, before we leave, you could put up the last slide with our contact information on, and then we can field those questions. I think this is a really timely question. You may not be aware that Commissioner Miller has introduced a food desert ordinance that is a new tool for a new incentive tool to attract mid-sized grocers, full-service grocers to our Southland, or to the county, and in particularly our Southland region. So I think, again, in the instance where there's a new tool, there's an existing Class 8 tool, and now this reactivation tool, I think there's really a moment in time where we can energize and spur investment. So would suggest that you reach out to either me or Sarah with the information and any of the planning documents that you may have, because we may be able to at least advise you on some of the various tools that are available to all of us now.
And apologies again for getting Leslie's new last name wrong. I'm not used to it. I'm sorry. It's very new. Her last name is Rauer, but you can still contact her at her old email address, which is leslie.feemister.
Fantastic.
Sorry.
A lot of communities got hit pretty hard by the Great Recession, and then the pandemic came right behind the Great Recession. So how is this abandonment app going to improve the quality of life in some of these struggling communities?
I'll go ahead and answer these. I know my team's been working on this diligently and really working with the community. As I had said earlier, it really allows the community to get their arms around where their greatest opportunities and the challenges are, and understand the scale of the challenges that they're facing. So this may not be a problem in many of our communities, but it also is an opportunity where they can line up, identify, abandoned properties and determine whether or not, there's a development opportunity there, or a affordable housing initiative that they can replace that housing within the community with other partners. So I think, again, it's just really understanding the conditions that you have and being able to look for, immediate, midterm, long-term solutions to address some of the challenges that many communities face.
Yeah, to just back up what Christy said, I think that those abandonment maps are great for municipalities to make decisions about targeted demolitions, like Kai mentioned in Harvey, or targeted acquisitions by the land bank, or the South Suburban Land Bank, Cook County Land Bank, by the municipality itself. If you have a lot of abandoned properties in one area and you can see a development opportunity, you can see it visually as opposed to just seeing it kind of in a more hypothetical sense.
Well, we like to keep these things to 1 hour, so I'm going to just ask one last question to Christy. The South Suburban mayors and managers, I know we got a lot of things going on in the South Suburbs. What are you doing to spur the economic development in our region?
So I think, broadly, we're really trying to change the trajectory, as I mentioned. We're also, these were initiatives. The Southland Reactivation Act, for example, was legislation that was introduced originally in 2019. So they don't happen overnight, but we really try to continue to move the needle and try to accelerate investment. I'll give you one example. We're currently working with Representative Will Davis, who's just introduced legislation. It's House Bill 5810 that calls for the state of Illinois to issue a request for qualifications for a master developer to develop the South Suburban Airport. So we've been instrumental in providing him some data along with other partners, including the Chicago Southland Economic Development Corporation, on what transportation, distribution, logistics activity there's been in the region, what kind of systems are in place, what are the assets that are surrounding the area, and really thinking about how is what's the future opportunity of the South Suburban Airport to be a cargo airport, for example. And so, as many of you know, e-commerce is, is everywhere, and it's here likely to stay. We're not necessarily returning back to not ordering things online. So, trying to capitalize on that, make sure that our state and the region's transportation network is competitive with other, parts of the country, and making sure that we're supporting a strategic economic development plan that also is looking at, equity investment is important to us. So we're, working with our local and state partners, on local, county, and state partners on these initiatives.
Well, thank you, Christy. Thank you, Kai. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Sarah. We really appreciate it, and keep up the fantastic work that the South Suburban mayors and managers do for the area. I'll turn it over to Terry Winfrey now to close us out.
Yeah, I just want to thank you. Also, definitely very impressive information, and I always appreciate attending your events and hearing and learning more. So it's been really fabulous. I did put your email address, your website address in the chat box. So if anyone can go directly to the website, it's there. So I encourage people to save the chat box. But also there's a couple informations about upcoming events. So next month, as I said, we do this type of an event every month. The next webinar will include Dr. Teresa Bogg from Village of Monee, and then Dr. March from the mayor, he's the mayor of Peatone, and then also Marcy Meyer, the mayor of Beecher. So that little region is where we're focusing on next. And that one is usually, we're always the second Tuesday of the month, but because next month, the second Tuesday is election day, we've moved our events. So next month we will be meeting on November the 15th. So information for that's also in the chat box. We also have a couple of great business after hours coming up this month, later this month. You can find all of this information on our website. So please visit that and visit often. Thanks everyone. Enjoy your day. Have a great afternoon.